Good morning, Mr. Ong. Yeah, thank you for joining us today for this interview. Perhaps first we'll look at the recent education reform. Why do you think that such a targeted and tailored approach to the general education will actually be beneficial for students?
We have always insisted that the Singapore economic model must be an inclusive one, where everyone benefits. Everyone must see hope for a better future. And that must depend on skills. To have skills means you must learn your whole life, because you don't just get skills like that. For something that you must take a whole life to learn, you must have passion, you must have interest. Our school system must be reoriented to recognize that new reality. We have to have a system that nurture those passions, nurture those interests. I think that will be the objective of our education system, the major objective. Second was the change in the PSLE system. We move away from that over-emphasis on academic grades. So if we were just to be a bit less stressed about that, and to accept that actually where I go to in primary school, where I go to in secondary school, does not affect my life so much. Actually, we can reduce a lot of stress and make learning a lot more enjoyable. The third big change, structural change, will be the phasing out of streaming. And that really touches the heart of the reform. With streaming, I think there is also a sense of stigmatization and labeling, which therefore limits the growth mindset of certain students if we are streamed to a so-called lesser stream. So we want to lift that constraint and allow every student to have a growth mindset.
So I would like just go back a little to the topic on 4IR. So as we are gearing our education system towards preparing the students for the future and future skill sets, do you think that traditional subjects like history, literature will still stay relevant in this transformation towards 4IR?
When you move to 4IR, what is most important? Humanistic skills. So what subjects inculcate in you those humanistic skills? It's actually a lot of the social sciences. Yeah, we do need to learn our math. We need to raise our standard of literacy, language literacy and numeracy. But I think what is very important, if we believe that in this era humanistic skills are important, are actually the social sciences. Learn technology, but at the same time learn the social sciences. It is the combination of that makes us human and makes us continue to be relevant and valuable.
You mentioned it is so important that now we continue to focus on humanistic skills, social sciences. So how do we articulate this point to students? To let them know
students
that
understand, employers may not. To really underscore that, we have to work on the employers. They always have to sort applicants because they get so many applications for a few jobs, and you can't possibly interview everyone. You have to sort, right? But how do you shortlist? You shortlist, you can go by class of honours or which university you're from. If my job requires you to work in teams, maybe I will look for people with teamwork experience. So if I have a more sophisticated sieve and criteria for shortlisting, we send a very different message to students. Because if every time you go back on academic grades, the signal that students get is just to focus, pick the subjects that you can score, and it changes the whole education behavior. So I think employers plays a big part.
Given that much aspects of our education system are grounded on meritocratic principles, which is often meritorious and selective in nature, this whole process will naturally produce winners and losers. I think the question is, how do we take care of those who have fallen off the ladder and ensure that they can be back into the game and they can always have new opportunities to survive in this selective and meritocratic system.
On your question whether education continue to work in terms of uplifting students from humble backgrounds, of course it does. But even when Michael Young wrote about meritocracy, I think he already saw the fallacy of it a couple of generations down the road, which is that the more meritocracy work well, the more it's going to look unjust. Yeah, because it worked well, parents who did well under the system will then invest in their children's education. and those without the means of educating their their children better, they lose out, right? So that therefore resulted in meritocracy becoming sometimes a dirty word, because it means social immobility or the privilege being encrusted at the top of society. Having said that, so I think we need to understand the irony and the paradox of this whole thing, that the more meritocracy work, the more it actually look unjust. The thing is this, we cannot find another system that works better. So I think meritocracy is still probably the most sound system, and today it does encourage everyone to educate themselves well and try to do well, except that those from rich families seem to have an edge and seems to have a starting point that is 10 meters ahead of you. So how do we overcome that? I think, which is essentially what we are trying to do. The concept of skills future, that is not just about your education, your formal education, but about a lifelong pursuit. That so even if you stumble during your formal schooling years, it is not the end. You can take a more circuitous route, may take you a while longer, but you can still continue to improve. Which is why in MOE we are determined by 2030 we will provide enough upgrading places for all ITE students to go beyond NITEC. So you can go to higher NITEC, diploma, or even higher. Secondly is the concept that meritocracy ought to have a broader definition, where you define meritocracy as academic meritocracy. That's when you have certain perverse behavior and unfairness start to show up. But if we can take a broader definition of meritocracy, take into account of specific strengths. I'm hiring you even though you may not have the best class honours, but you're so strong in that particular subject, be it art, design, IT, whatever, then I think you have a much more inclusive meritocracy. A broader definition that allows as many people to have a shot at being successful.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Minister. With that, we've come to the end of this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.